Thank you, Zainab, for having me on the show. First of all, I need to say thank you, because it will never be enough to appreciate giving me this opportunity to be able to talk about an area that I'm very passionate, but not just passionate, because I really know that we are making a difference. When we are able to share the knowledge we have, and when we are given an opportunity like this one, then we know that that is the difference, especially for us in the university. Then it gives us an opportunity to share our experiences and also what we have found out, and also what the viewers know, so that we are able to share. As you have rightly put it, we have been learning, and I hope that our viewers have been following us, and it is good for them to learn that my name is Dr. Becky Sanda, and I am in the Department of Early Childhood and Special Needs Education in Kenyatta University. It is where I'm able to share these skills, to be able to learn, to teach it to teacher trainees and persons that work with children with disabilities, and also to research in this area, because it's an area that is very raw. It is generating a lot of data, and some of it, I think that is what we want to share this morning. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Karibu sana, Dr. Becky. So our child is 3 years old. They are ready to go to school. We've identified that they might need, they might have or require special needs. What do we do from there?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. Just like any other family, children with special needs, or sometimes we call them children with special needs, sometimes we call them children with disabilities, and sometimes we call them children with exceptional needs. So like any other child, the law in Kenya stipulates that children are supposed to now go to kindergarten at 3 years old, and it means that even these children rightfully need to be in school. Yes, so it's also good for parents to know, because sometimes parents start feeling defeated, that really, does my child with special needs really need to go to school? And I want to encourage them with a very big yes, that they need to go to school. And probably they have been attending antenatal, and some of the children are being supported with clinical support. Maybe they are not feeling well, or they are on medication, and for things like that. So it means that the children will be continuing with that, but they need to go to school. So usually we do propose, and usually we will have counsel and talks to families. We probably are talking a very difficult topic today, because sometimes parents even make the choice that maybe this child is not worthy to take to school. And of course the community has already, remember we talked about stigma, the community has labeled and started wondering, does this child need to go to school? But we are here to say that they need to go to school, and the first stop shop is assessment. I mean, that is what they need, Zainab. They need to go for assessment.
Why is this assessment important for both the child and even the teacher in school?
Thank you very, very much. Including the parent, Zainab, an assessment is a report that generates data that is very, very important, probably known to the mother and father of the child, and sometimes to a caregiver, but it is not known to who matters, especially the parents. The assessment report may generate something new, but also now the classroom teacher needs information that they are receiving an exceptional child. Therefore, it is a report that is generated at an assessment center, and this assessment center is either found in an educational institution. In Kenya, most of them are anchored in educational institutions, and those educational institutions are only anchoring them, just anchoring because they are under the Ministry of Education. They are just anchoring. They really are not per se connected. It's like hosting. They are hosting the assessment centers, and they also need viewers to know that these assessment centers are free. They do not charge a fee because they are government institutions. Yes. However, we also have some assessment centers that are private privately owned, and those then the parents may need to pay for that. So it means that the parent has a choice to take a child to a public institution. An example, allow me to mention maybe just 3 large assessment centers. One of them is Kenyatta National Hospital. Kenyatta National Hospital is not anchored in an educational institution, but it's a standalone parastatal that offers assessment. Yes, it does that. And also we have St. Anne's Jogoo Road is another large assessment center. Again, the parents can be able to go there. We also have another assessment center that is very, very special to us, Kenya Institute of Special Needs Education, that's KISE. KISE in Kasarani, they're just a neighbor here. And there, the parents can be able to assess this. And like I have mentioned, we do have private partners such as Gertrude Children's Home. They have been doing assessment for a while now. The Aga Khan Hospital has also been doing assessment, and probably the other hospitals, and of course there are private consultants also doing assessments at Zainab.
Okay, so Dr. what is contained in this assessment?
Thank you very much for that question. So our assessment comes like in segments. The first segment is biodata. So the assessment center will collect biodata from the parents, from caregivers, guardians, or any other persons that are with the children. So they will collect biodata such as the name of the child, age of the child, when did the parents recognize what they are presenting, what position does the child take in the family, is there a history of what the family is presenting, how have they been taking care of the child? What was the nature of the birth of the child? Was it maybe through cesarean section? Was it a natural birth? Was it a home birth? Was it a clinical setting birth? All these, Zainab, if you look at them, they do matter a lot. Yes. So that data is collected and it is put in record now for the first time. Probably the hospital has it, but remember, Zainab, today we are talking about preparing our child for the school setting. So it means that an educationist is interested in this data. So that is one segment of that information. The second segment, Zainab, then they are now going to collect data on what is being presented. Maybe our child is visually, has visual problems or sight. You see, now they are going to collect the data. When did you realize, let's call our son Brian, when did you realize Brian could not see? What were the manifestations? And all that kind of data. Maybe he was born with it congenital, maybe he acquired, maybe he was ill, he had a disease. You see, all this is very important.
They interact with the child directly?
Yes, probably after this second, you collect the data now from the guardian. Yes. Then now the third, which is very important, what you have asked, is the child now goes through the assessment. In case, and each and every child, depending on their disability, then there's a specialist to conduct that assessment. For example, a child with visual problems, then there will be an ophthalmologist. The assessor is an ophthalmologist because he will be only specialized in sight. If a child has hearing problems, then they are going to get an audiologist. If a child has behavior problems, then the assessor is going to be a behavior therapist. If a child has physical deformities, they are going to have a physiotherapist. You see, so each and every child after those stages, then they are going to be supported accordingly. Sometimes then it may be the first time, depending on the family, that they are meeting a specialist in the area of their child. But it's not always the case, depending also on some families, because also families, remember, there is a lot of information out there, and families are finding solutions for themselves. They may even tell you, we have been to 3 or 4 other ophthalmologists. Are you seeing? We have been to 2 or 3 audiologists. And of course, it's the time to ask them probably what reports, sometimes they may be having reports with them, then you bring the reports and record them, that they have been, let me give an example, maybe a child with visual problems, you may realize that maybe they have visited Kenya Institute of Special Education, like we have talked about, it is a large assessment center. Then you're going to realize they have been to Kikuyu Eye Clinic, you see? You see, they have reports for Kikuyu because, you know, it deals with sight problem. They may have even been to Lions, the Lions Hospital in Kangemi. They may even have been to Tenwek to see. They even have been to Kijabe. You see, they even have been to Kenyatta. They even have been to Moi Referral. And probably it's what we'll be talking about, what would make parents move from assessment to assessment, yeah. So some of that is what happens.
But essentially, for most people, this is the first time they're meeting the specialist.
Not really, because I think it's natural for each and every mother. Even the anxiety makes mothers really try, especially mothers, to really try to see as many specialists as possible. Yes. Yeah, then it's at this juncture, as an ABU, that a report will be generated, of course, after examination. After examination, the report comes out in this nature. It is going to present, one, the strengths of the child, and I'll talk about them later. Two, it is going to talk about the weaknesses of the child. In relation to the disability, strengths related to the disability, weaknesses related to the disability, and finally, it is going to generate a status report. Example, maybe this child has visual problems, but they are mild. This child has visual problems, they are moderate. This child has visual problems, they are severe. And this child has visual problems, they are profound. That is the kind of report that is going to be generated. Then lastly, it is going to produce like a summary or an analysis, putting all those things together. It is going to say, now, Brian is I'm giving an example. Brian is 6-year-old, has been presented to the assessment center by either the mother or the father, is either from a single or they are married and all that, and is a first or second born child who was born with visual impairment or had illness as a result of that, and as such, lost his sight gradually. I'm just giving an example. And as a result, Brian is now probably as moderate visual loss, and he can now be placed in either a regular kindergarten, because he's 3, a regular kindergarten, whereby the classroom teacher needs to receive him knowing that, one, probably Brian cannot read the board. You see, that's the first time such a report is going to be presented. Probably he cannot read on the blackboard, or two, he needs the use of Braille. He cannot be able to write using a pen and paper. And he can also not be able to read print. It means he will be reading Braille. It's the first time parents now are able to interact with such content. Yes.
Dr. Becky will take a short break, but when we come back, I would want to know now, after Brian has gotten his assessment, where do we go next? Let's take a short break, we'll be right back.
You are watching TV47, The Home.
Zainab, for that question, actually you have elicited a thought that I could share with the viewers, but I had mentioned earlier that remember that parents probably this is assessment 3, assessment 4. And you can understand why, Zainab. We've talked about this, that no one wants to just accept a report or look at their beautiful son and accept a report. So I need you to know first, usually there's a lot of frustration. I think we need to mention that because that is not what parents are expecting. And it's at this juncture, sometimes we have parents walking out of assessment centers and probably not coming back.
Just because they're not ready?
Yes, so many things will happen, a lot of thoughts will run, and one of them is that some parents will walk out of those assessment centers. Sometimes they may even grab all that material you are collecting and say, that is not true, my son doesn't have that nature of what. That is maybe, we're just creating scenarios because we do receive them. So that could be scenario 1. Scenario 2, a parent usually, and it's with a lot of humility, and I explained this. Scenario 2, most daddies do not take this very, very well. So it's at this juncture that very many mothers have found themselves on their own. Because it's daddy will call mommy out and say, in my family we don't have disabilities. This is from your side, and I'm not going to do this. So that's another scenario, and mommy is left there. The other scenario is that daddy and mommy, depending on the strength of the family, can take this report, and they could actually say, so where do we go, like you're asking? And then the other one would be, the mommy also, nowadays mommy also is feeling like, I cannot take this. Yeah, mommy also can walk out and she says, this is not what I bargained for, I'm not going to do this. So for the sake of our show, then we're going to put the strength in a family that is going to take the report and what do they do with it. Yes. But whichever way, Zainabu, everyone surely is going to go through the emotions. Yes. A lot is going to go. And you remember, they even need to go home and discuss about it. Yes, and they're going to discuss.
But essentially, how long does it take?
It can take the assessment depending on, okay, let's give an example of a child that comes with a lot of reports. You see, those ones can take maybe 2-3 days because the reports are there. But if it is a child that has not been to the assessment center, then they can maybe collect the data. And sometimes we are having places in the assessment centers like play centers. Like in Kise, we have even play centers, and why? We want to even observe the child playing. We want to see the child playing. We even have the water therapy in Kise. We also want to see the child in different scenarios. And sometimes the child is not aware they are being watched, so that you are really able to conclusively, because sincerely you cannot look at a child at one time and say that they have this. And remember, the children will go through, apart from maybe going through the instruments being used for their sight and the like, they are also going to be given written work. They can be given written work, and then you realize the child cannot read. Maybe you give them print, the normal print, that is 12 font, and then increase it and increase it. Sometimes you may find some children who may read with a very large font. You see, it means this kind of child, the report will read that they will go to school and they can be able, the teacher can enlarge print and all those kind of things. But it will depend with the nature of the disability. There are even children you may need to send back to clinical settings for support. Let's say the child's maybe an ear infection. The child has lost hearing, but they still have an ear infection. It means that even as they join school, we are going to recommend that they go for clinical assessment, because remember, some of these things like the ear infections, then they are contagious. The other kids will get their communicable diseases. So we need to stop them so that this child gets treatment and is on continuous treatment. So many things are actually generated from the assessment report. It will produce an educational report. It is going to produce a clinical report whether the child needs to continue being supported by the clinical side. It is also going to produce a nutrition or a health report. Does the child need to be on maybe a special diet, like children with autism? You see, we probably need to get them off the sugars. You see, this is the time it is written, apart from the clinical saying, also the education needs to support, so that when they go to the nursery or kindergarten, then the cook or the cateress is aware that there's a child who cannot take sugars and cannot take the rich end foods and like that. And remember also, the family can benefit from this kind of report. They are also going to get a report on socialization, because now the specialist can tell this child cannot play with others. And you know, when you go to the assessment center, it's not just Brian at the assessment center. There are other children who have been brought for different things. So sometimes you may get that he's exposed to, then sometimes you may get a child who may withdraw. A child may withdraw from others. So you see, you can note that this is a child who may need support to be able to socialize with other children. This is then from the way families present themselves, you can also recommend whether the families need support. You could easily tell that they need to go for counseling. Maybe they are in denial. Maybe they have accepted. Sometimes you may find, unfortunately, families that are abusive to the child. Sometimes you may find grandma coming with the child and telling you, this is my grandchild, but the parents are not supporting. You see, so quickly the assessment center has to turn things around to be able to find out. Sometimes, Zainabu, this is where the social worker comes in, because you realize a child is presented and they are maybe abused, especially children with intellectual or mental challenges. Yeah, you may find actually the child has been abused, and the community worker is invited, or even the local chief. Yeah, so when it comes to special needs education, Zainabu, then you realize that an assessment is a very great document, because look at how much data it has generated. It collects a lot of data, and I need viewers to know that it is a right. And I'm emphasizing it is a right for a child with exceptional needs to go for assessment, and it is a right for parents to be supported with that kind of support that we are. And that is the only way a child with special needs can be ready for school. Yes.
And I'm sure, Daktari, even this data can be important in terms of policy making and all that in general. So we're now in school. We are presenting the results we got from the assessment. Yeah, take us through that.
Thank you, Zainabu. And I really hope that our viewers are following us, because now we have a report and we have explained that it has multiple data. And it's good you have mentioned, remember that this is where the government generates data that it can even be able to share with the National Council of Persons with Disability, because we do have such a council that is tracking persons with disability. We also having data that can be generated when we ask families, where do you come from? You see, it's not that we are tribalistic. We need to know, you can collect data, Zainabu, and find out that probably deafness is in a certain region. Yeah, so it means that this data is very, very important. What would be causing deafness? We have had like 20 children from a certain region X, and they are not hearing. Yeah, so maybe it is something in the environment, maybe it is a disease that is found only there, maybe there's been neglect, but researchers can come in to find out there. Now our child Brian and his family have gotten the report, and they are in the report, I forgot to mention to viewers, it has a placement. It has a placement. The report is going to show, for example, they place them. We can place him, I'm giving an example, maybe City Primary in Nairobi, because we have a unit for children. Yes, it will have City Primary. So City Primary will coordinate with the assessment center and with the family, and Brian will be placed in City Primary or in Jacaranda Primary and or in Nile Primary on Jogoro. Yes. Yes, they have the special teacher and they have the devices, including Modega Primary. It means our child with, or Brian with visual challenges can be placed there. So it has a placement. And remember, different children with different disabilities have different placements. We also have different placements for children with hearing loss. Like, for example, they can be also placed in different places like Kamboy School for the Deaf, Kuja School for the Deaf. They can be placed there. We also have placements for children with intellectual difficulties, like Madare. Madare takes children with intellectual difficulties. So the placement is indicated. But Zainabu, remember we talked about parents who would prefer to go on their own through the private consultants. The path is a little different because the private consultant cannot place children in public institutions. It means probably these parents intend to look for private institution placements. So the pathways start going different. A child following the public system and a child going to the private system, they are different. But remember that both do support. The private sector has continued to support children with disabilities in great ways. Yes. So that is what happens when they go in different ways. And when they arrive in the schools, then the parents are expected to report to the head teacher, and the head teacher receives them. Again, we are going to talk about it. It is not always rosy like that, because sometimes the schools have turned away the parents and said, we don't have a vacancy, we are crowded, we cannot be able to support your children.
Unfortunately, Daktari, we are out of time. I'm sure we will still talk about this in the coming episodes. Thank you so much for making time. We truly appreciate it. It's always a